Kickboxing is a fairly simple, but also a pure and just a brutal combat sport. It's a combat sport, though, that never really got huge. I mean, kickboxing was fairly small in the 90s. There were a few points in the 80s and 90s when it picked up a little steam, mostly because some a minus and B Hollywood movies were made about it, like the movie Kickboxer. But for the most part, it's a very second tier or even third tier sport behind mixed martial arts and especially behind boxing, because in the 90s, MMA was behind boxing. Today, I think MMA has overtaken boxing. Boxing is very much an inferior sport, and I think it's just not as popular as MMA anymore. I think that's great. But in terms of kickboxing, I think it was a big sometimes maybe when movies came out about it. Sometimes kickboxing would pick up a little steam when combat athletes from other combat sports would have a few off bouts in kickboxing or would just pursue kickboxing for a couple of years. Like some MMA fighters would go back and forth between kickboxing and mixed martial arts, and that way some mixed martial arts fans would watch kickboxing, like Mirko Krokop or Alistair Overeem or Mark Hunt. They're all three of those huge superstars, and they would fight in both kickboxing and in mixed martial arts. Of course, most fighters quickly find out there's really not much fame or money in kickboxing just because it's not that huge. Most of the money, especially when this game came out, was in boxing. So if you were a fighter in the 90s, you would pursue boxing or to a lower extent mixed martial arts. Mixed martial arts really only picked up steam itself in the 2000s when the UFC got bigger and also when Pride got bigger. Pride was like the mixed martial arts organization from like 2003 to like 2006, their heyday. They had like all the best fighters for the time, like Fedor, for example, like the greatest of all time. This is a good kickboxing game. It's a kickboxing simulation. It has really good mechanics. You have your punches, your kicks, and special moves, and when you press the arrow keys in conjunction with these attacks, you can also do height modifiers. So like you can kick the legs, the body, or the face, and of course you can mix all of that up with powerful attacks, blocking as you back away when you press back, and of course combinations. Combinations are typically just for punches, but you can mix up punch combinations with powerful kicks at the end. The strategy in this game is really, really good. You have all the best kickboxing moves, and you gotta keep in mind, kickboxing is never just kickboxing. Like this game, for example. K-1 The Arena Fighters. It's kickboxing, yes, but it includes other stand-up combat schools. It includes Muay Thai. It includes karate. There's Taekwondo moves you can do in this game. It's pretty much any kind of stand-up techniques that you can think of are in this game, except stupid ones that don't actually work in a real fight. That's another thing about the 90s and the 80s. People didn't really quite understand what works and what doesn't in a real fight where you can do anything in the fight. Like, people kind of got what works when you're just boxing. But then outside of just regular boxing, there were so many karate movies, so many kung fu movies. People thought some of the jumping, stylistic fighting styles they would see in like Chinese kung fu movies would actually work in a real fight. Like Bruce Lee fighting off 10 people by doing spinning kicks and then screaming at them. Before mixed martial arts and other combat sports that aren't just boxing really became popular, people were, for the most part, completely blind to what actually works in a real fight and what's just stupid choreographed movie nonsense made for pure entertainment. Games like this kind of give you a good idea of what works and what doesn't in a real fight. You can see these guys are not doing anything crazy. They're timing their attacks, they're blocking when they need to, they're conserving their energy. All these things are very important when you're fighting another professional fighter. If you do stupid moves from a stupid kung fu movie, that's gonna look good for about 30 seconds until you get tired and KO'd. There are definitely problems in this game. I mean, while the strategy is really good, the graphics are really not. Like, the graphics in this game are very rudimentary. I mean, let's just say it, the graphics in this game suck. There are other bad things in this game. For example, there are slowdowns, like frame rate issues in the game. I think it's because there's just this big auditorium, so there's maybe like too much information on the screen at one time and your PlayStation can't handle it or something, I don't know. And this definitely screws with your gameplay. I mean, you're trying to fight someone, you're trying to move out of the way of their attacks, and then all of a sudden you're frozen or you're moving at half speed, while the CPU, it doesn't know things are frozen. It's just continuing on with its predetermined moves, kicking your ass. It kind of sucks. This game also uses real professional kickboxers from various weight classes from the mid to late 90s. Honestly, I'm not sure if they use like their moves. I mean, I'm sure they do. It's just I don't remember what the preferred moves were of fighters from 1997. It's just not something I remember or would want to research. That would take way too long. The strategy in this game is so good, a lot of the times it gets really, really hard. Like, you might be participating in a tournament against CPUs in this game, and the first few fights will be easy, but then like the third and fourth guy, you can already feel the CPU is fighting a lot smarter. The CPU is blocking and moving out of the way. It's very surprisingly smart computers in this game for the time it was released. So yeah, really, the two prevailing bad aspects of the game are the obvious aspects, the graphics, which clearly are just awful, and the lag issues, which are prevalent sometimes. It's not a constant thing, but it happens more times than I would like. I mean, really, when the game lags or freezes even once, that's already more times than I would like, because I would like that to never happen ever. Over the years, I've reviewed a couple of other kickboxing, boxing, wrestling, or MMA games from this particular era. How would this stack up? Well, let me just take a few and just compare and contrast. Let's say WWF SmackDown 2 for the PS1. Not exactly the same year, but more or less the same era. That's obviously a wrestling game, but it had some real moves. Most moves, of course, were not. It had way better graphics, way more content in the game, and overall, it was a much better game. But it didn't have really good, like, fighting. It had good wrestling moves, throwing moves, jumping off the turnbuckle, but in terms of just fighting moves, it was pretty stupid. A punch and a kick did the same exact thing. There was no difference. So the stand-up techniques in that game were pretty much non-existent. Now let's take a game that's a lot more like this one. Let's say K-1 Grand Prix, also for the PS1. A kickboxing simulation. The graphics were better. The techniques were a little bit worse. Overall, that game was worse because the graphics and the technical aspects were a lot better, but the actual fighting techniques weren't the same. They were lacking compared to this game. You still had like attack modifiers, you could still kick and punch and all of that, but this game is just a lot deeper than that. Another game I reviewed about kickboxing was simply titled Kickboxing for the PS1. That game was a lot more cartoony in nature. It looked like a cartoon. The graphics weren't that good, but they were still a lot more advanced than the graphics in this game. But that game, surprisingly, even though the graphics were very cartoony, it had a very deep kickboxing mechanics, much like this game. So in terms of the mechanics and the strategy aspects, they're very similar. I guess that's the theme of kickboxing games from the 90s. Don't judge a book by its cover. Don't judge its bad and good aspects. The game could look good, it could be very advanced in terms of graphics, but the actual kickboxing techniques might be lacking. And then the game might look very rudimentary and be broken in a lot of technical aspects, like this game, but it's a really good kickboxing simulation. Go figure. This game has good kickboxing techniques, but not good programming techniques. So the game is good, and it's also bad. I think the good, though, definitely outweighs the bad in this kickboxing simulation. It gets an official Stan Birdman rating of a 7 out of 10. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more classic game reviews. Goodbye, my friends.